Hi all, Michelle Gillmartin here, and today we're going to be doing kind of a fun project, at least snippets of a fun project, on how to take an adult coloring book image and scan it so you get a high resolution image. I'm going to scan it with the Scan-A-Cut and I'm going to save it as a JPEG image, and then I'm going to take it to the Luminaire. You could also use the Solaris. And I'm going to take it into Design Center or IQ Designer, and I'm going to convert it to the line drawing, because that way I can paint it. Now, this is a really complex design. We're actually doing this one, and when I mean an adult coloring book, it's something like this. I get these at Hobby Lobby. You can also get them online. But it's got a lot of stuff going on. So this is the image most likely to give you the message that their data is too complex to render. When you take it to the Dream Machine or the, I think you could do probably Dream Machine and Destiny too, but Solaris and Luminaire. This is not going to be a design that you can put fill into on the machine. It's so big and it's so complex. This is one that you could do like a red work design if you don't want to paint. It's like a red work design. But let's get started and I'll show you how this happens. Now, this type of image, this type of resolution does not happen if you use the scanning board on the Luminaire or the Solaris. You won't get the resolution, but it's a technique that I've used a lot over the years for as long as we've had cameras and scanners and machines, and that is to scan the image. You could use a flatbed scanner if you don't have a Scan-A-Cut. I'm going to use the Scan-A-Cut because, hey, that's part of the Scan-A-Cut is it actually scans as well. So I'm using the scanning mat for that today. And I'm just taking my picture and putting it underneath my scanning mat. And I'm going to take it over to the Scan-A-Cut. All right, so I have my scanning mat loaded onto the Scan-A-Cut, and I am going to advance to the next setting here. Oops, wait a minute. Scan. And in this case, I'm going to scan to a USB. So that way I can just take the image directly off the USB instead of scanning it into Design Center or IQ Designer. So I'm going to go ahead and select Scan. And I did some testing with this particular design. So in your settings here, you need to have a screen resolution of 200 dpi. If you go higher, the machine will not open this image. So anytime you have a complex image, but it's just line art, like this is just outlines like a coloring book page, a 200 dpi image is going to be more than enough. You're going to see it in just a minute. So I'm going to go ahead and select OK and then start. And the scanner is going to scan into the machine, and it's going to come out as a JPEG. All right. So this is important to note because you can't really name your files on the machine. So I know that the file that I'm looking for is image 13 JPEG, and it's going to save to a USB. So I'm going to select OK and know that number 13 is the image that I'm going to be working with when I get to the Luminaire. So hang on and let's move over to that station. All right, so there's something I'm going to do in my settings before I even go to my Design Center. So I'm going to open up my machine settings screen, and I want to go to my hoop sizes. And I want to select the crosswise grid, just the cross. And because I know when I get to Design Center that this design, this picture is going to be too big and too complex. So I'm going to split it in half in Design Center. In order to do that, I have to have that grid, that straight line, so that so that the machine can actually put it back together again. And the machine does actually put it back together. So select OK. I'm going to go to my Design Center. The first thing I'm going to do is select my leaf. This is a line image, and I am taking my line image from the USB. So I'm going to Images. I'm looking for image 13. So I'm going to touch on image 13. Takes a moment. And there's my image. I'm going to go ahead and select set. Takes a minute. And there is the outline of my coloring book image. You would never get something this clear by just scanning it, even if your scan is set to fine on the Luminaire, the Solaris. So I'm just going to crop this in. I want to make sure, so with this, I'm not going to get a lot of noise, meaning the little dots of stuff that you have to erase because they're just like little points in there. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that in. And I want to get I know that there's a little bit of fuzz over there, so I want to get as close as I can. The other thing that's important is if you look down here at the bottom, you'll see that the default is for this to come out in a satin stitch. It's not going to process for you at all if you leave it in a satin stitch. So we're going to touch this. And for now, I'm going to just select the double stitch. I really want it in a triple stitch because it makes for nice outlines. But if I do that now, it's not going to, it's going to give me that it's too complex. I can always change it to a triple stitch later. And since I've done this already, I'm going to select one notch up on the detection scale and select OK. And there is my rendered image. You would never get something that crisp by just scanning it in on the scan board. So when you can, if you have something that's a little bit more complex, try to either scan it in on your Scan-A-Cut or scan it on a flatbed scanner and save it as a JPEG onto your USB drive. So I'm going to go ahead and do set. And then the first thing I'm going to do is size this. I have selected already the 10 7/8 by 16 inch hoop for this Luminaire. And again, this is going to be like red work, except for it's going to be black work, and I'm going to paint it in later. So I'm going to make this as big as I possibly can. So I'm just going to expand it as far as it'll go. All right, and then do OK. And then I'm going to fade out my background picture. Okay, so there's my my coloring book page, all completely rendered. So I'm going to show you what happens if I select next. Sad face. The data is too complicated and cannot be converted. But you know, there's got to always be a workaround, right? Okay, so I'm going to say okay, and I'm going to return. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use this grid here to erase half and then bring the other half back. Okay, so first of all, I need to save this in the memory of Design Center or IQ Designer, because when I erase the other half, I need to be able to bring the whole picture back in exactly the same position as when I started. So I'm going to select memory, and I'm going to save it to the memory of Design Center. Now I'm going to erase the bottom half of the design. So I'm going to go get my eraser. First of all, when you erase, especially something like this that's got this much complexity to it, pick your pen up once in a while so that you don't get all the way to the end and make a boo-boo and have to backspace and it all comes back. So I'm going to go ahead and go up to about 200%. First of all, I want the square because I have to come right up against that line, and I'm going to get a really big square. All right. Then I'm going to do 200%, and I'm going to move over to the edge. I want to make sure I grab the line to move the page to move and I don't erase something. All right. So I'm going to take my square and I'm going to come right up to the line. This is the most important part, is right here. The rest of it you can just erase perfect without, much problem because it's over here. But this has to be exact on that line. And you can make it bigger if you like. So I'm going to continue erasing this line against, oopsie, I went a little too far. So now what I want to do is just come back and come in there a little bit. And I just want to clip those lines right at the line. So on this line part here, it's better if you lift up and come down a couple of times so that if you have to back up, then it's much easier to do. Oops, too much. All right, so I'm going to continue. I'm going to pause the camera, and I'm going to continue on this line until I get this line all the way across erased. All right, so I've come all the way across. Now I can reduce this back down to 100%, and you can see that my line right there is perfect. That's the one that matters, okay? Because that's where you're going to match it together. So it has to be, it can't be jagged, because then when you go to erase the top, it's not going to blend in. So that line has to be straight. Get my eraser bigger again. And now I can just go through and erase all of this other stuff. Make sure that you get everything. You want to make sure that you have nothing left in the bottom. All right. Now I'm going to save this to the memory here in Design Center. I'm going to do next. I'm going to leave everything at the default, except I wanted the triple stitch, remember? So now I can actually add the triple stitch here. And then I'm going to do set. And so now I have half of the embroidery design. So again, I'm going to save this to memory. Now I'm going to save it in the embroidery side of the machine. There are two separate envelopes. There's two separate folders, two separate pockets, I guess. So, you know, you have to save them in both places. So I'm going to do add, and I'm going back to Design Center, and I'm going to go to the pocket, and I'm going to get my my design out. So this is my whole design. I did the top before, and now I'm going to erase the top. So I'm going to continue to do that till where all that's left is the bottom. All right, so I have the top completely erased, and I'm going to go ahead and send this one now to Design Center, or from Design Center to the machine, I guess. Again, don't forget, I want to do a triple stitch. And then for good measure, I'm going to still save this in the memory of the machine. So now in Design Center, I have a copy of all three. The entire, oops, I forgot to erase something there, so I have to go back. You see the little red box up there? It's something I forgot to erase. There we go. You want to make sure you erase everything. So now I'm going to send this one to the memory because the other one didn't had that little piece that wasn't erased. I'm going to set it to a triple stitch and then set. All right, so there we have it. The other half came in. It's completely perfectly matched. Let me group it though. Oh, looks like it is grouped. Yeah, it is grouped. All right, so what I want to do is I'm going to zoom in so that you can see. Let me return. And so now I do have to group them. Let's see. And I'm going to zoom in to 200%. I'm going to get the hand so I can pan and look at that match. You cannot tell which is part one and which is part two. So now this is completely digitized. And let's see what we're looking at for stitches. This is the largest tube. So I'm at 30,837 or 830 stitches in a 13.5 inch by 9 and 8 5/8 So it's going to be in the largest tube. The key here is if you don't have a hoop that's that big, is you set your hoop size in Design Center first. So I'm going to go ahead and sew this out, and we'll see what I get in a later episode.